Hello and welcome. I'm Vijay Srinivas, and today we are unpacking this year's Nobel Prize in Economics, an award that shines light on how innovation and technology drive economic growth. To help us decode this further, we are joined by leading columnist and economist, Mr. TK Arun. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Let me begin with you there. The Nobel Prize this year focused on innovation-led growth, correct? So, could you explain this in simple terms for our viewers, and what's the major takeaway for this for an emerging market like India?
Yeah. So this is not the first time that people are associated technological change with economic growth. In fact, Robert Solow, his famous papers in 56 and 57, they sort of explained American economic growth largely as being taking place as a result of technological change. You have capital, you have labor, both of them lead to economic growth. The more capital you have, the more labor you have, the greater the total output. But apart from these two factors, there is an element of technology. And when technology changes, your capital and labor tend to produce more output. So this association of technology with growth has been well established long ago. In fact, Schumpeter talked about creative destruction. In fact, even before Schumpeter, Karl Marx talked about how capitalism revolutionized production. And it is perpetually revolutionizing the production process. And not only the process of production, and also the social relations which are associated with each kind of production. So there is a long-standing lineage, intellectual lineage, or linking technological change with economic growth. What is special about this year's Nobel Prize is that the economists who have been awarded, J.L. Mukher, Philippe Aghion, and Howitt, they try to explain how this takes place and how that is leading to what drives the technological change. Not just that technology leads to economic growth, they are trying to explain what leads to technological change. So this is the contribution of these economists to win the Nobel Prize this time. And since we are now living in the age of artificial intelligence and rapid technological change in material sciences, in new fields of chemistry, physics, quantum computing, all that, this is now very, very important. Those who are left behind, those nations and societies which fail to catch up with the advance in technology, might actually take a very long while to catch up with the rest of the world as they forge ahead. So it is important to understand the dynamics of how technology changes and how that change leads to changes in production and economic output.
Joel Mokyo talks about the prerequisites for growth, and he says, knowledge, mechanical sciences, and institutions. Right? How do you see India performing on these fronts?
So India is actually not ready for this kind of a rapid change for a number of counts. See, this is not just a question of doing R&D, plenty of money being spent into research and technology, research and development. That, of course, is important. But what Joel Mukher talks about is that you need to have a number of things happening. He calls the scientific knowledge propositional knowledge. It needn't be exactly propositional. During the time of the Industrial Revolution, how many things work were not known to their full intellectual scientific depth. But still, they knew how some regular patterns of natural phenomena occurred. What made these natural phenomena change and how that could be harnessed for economic development. Now, this is called propositional knowledge. But prescriptive knowledge is what harnesses this propositional knowledge to production. So you need to have propositional knowledge alongside this prescriptive knowledge, plus a society that is ready to accept the change in scientific advance and also has the competence in terms of skills and mechanical aptitude, and a large enough number of people who have the skills and the mechanical aptitude who are capable of converting this propositional knowledge into prescriptive knowledge and deploy them in production to change and increase in output. Now, in this, India's caste system is a major hindrance to absorbing technology.
That's right, yeah.
If a large proportion of the Indian population is still locked into occupations which are deemed their legitimate kinds of occupation because of their inheritance, because of their ancestry, and their
Yeah.
ascribed identity. If you are the son of a weaver, you continue to be a weaver. If you are the son of somebody who makes shoes, you continue to make shoes. If you are cleaning drains, you will continue to clean drains. If this kind of an attitude continues, it is not possible for technology to disseminate and spread in this kind of a society. So there is one major hindrance. Then, of course, there is this uh, entrepreneurship failure. If there's an opportunity to make additional gains from investing in R&D, then people will be prepared to take the risk, right? That also we are not
Hmm.
actually doing. So at a cultural level, in our societal structure, and in terms of the spending on research and development and creating propositional knowledge, on all these accounts, India is not yet in a position where it can uh, sustain in a sustainable fashion, keep on innovating and deploying this innovation into production processes for economic growth.
Okay, so Agian and Howard, the other winners, emphasize on creative destruction, where old industries were replaced by new ones, driving economic growth.
I mean, the simplest and commonest example given is that of, say, the horse carriages being replaced by cars, right?
That's yeah.
So that is at the turn of the
The Luddite
20th
movement
century.
also, right?
Predominant mode of transport at the turn of the 20th century, when the 19th century was ending and 1900s was beginning, was horse carriages, where people just rode horses, or they traveled in horse-drawn carriages. Now, when the motor car came, entire horse carriage industry got wiped out. People who were experts in building carriages, the cart rides, the wheel ride, those who made wheels, the smiths who made the various parts of the wheels, gave it a steel covering. All these jobs became redundant. People who tended to horses, who stabled them, fed them, who cleaned up after them, all these jobs became redundant, and motor car became the new mode of transport. So one entire set of occupations disappeared. At the same time, a whole host of new occupations came up in the motor car industry. So you destroyed a traditional industry and then created a new industry. Similarly, in the case of handlooms and hand weaving, when mechanized weaving took place, came about, old jobs were destroyed and new higher productivity jobs were created. So initially they thought that this will lead to mass unemployment and displacement of labor. Actually, that's not what happened. Since new occupations came up in such large numbers and associated other fields of activity opened to create new jobs, that the creative destruction were not creation and destruction were not in equal proportions. Creation was much more than destruction, and so society as a whole benefited from this creative destruction. The same thing happened with when computers were introduced, where many trade unions in India stoutly opposed computerization in banks, computerization in corporations, thinking that this will destroy jobs. But look at what happened. We got so many more jobs and so many more higher paying jobs. And India became much better off because we introduced computers. So there is always resistance to change when the
Yeah.
new technology comes up. And unless that resistance changes and people appreciate that this will gain not only themselves but also society at large and are willing to adapt when technology changes, you will not be able to reap the benefits of technological advance.
That's right. But I think it's also important. We are a country of 1.4 billion people. The economy is a mixed economy. There's huge amounts of inequality there. It's also important to strike a balance between fostering innovation and also about protecting our existing industries, isn't it? So how do you do that?
So when you say protecting industry, you take handloom. Handloom still has a place in our world, but only as a highly prized, very important luxury item. It cannot be the mass consumption feature of clothes and clothing. We need handloom, but as a representative of fine workmanship of our tradition and to produce exquisite, rare pieces of work. But handlooms cannot be the ones that can affordably clothe all our people. For that, we need mills. So, will you want to protect handloom or do you want to create new jobs for these people who have traditionally been weavers? Look at the farmers themselves. In no survey of agricultural worker families does anybody say they want the next generation also to continue to work on the land. They want their new generation to learn engineering or become doctors or become lawyers or accountants or whatever. Everybody wants to be part of the new economy, right? So social progress, economic advance, social mobility, all this depends upon people changing their occupations also. When land was the only asset, primary asset for creating wealth, then of course people fought over land. Now land accounts for say only 1% or 2% of the total output in an advanced economy like the US. The agriculture accounts for only 1 or 2%, and agricultural jobs are 1 or 2%. In India, of course, agriculture used to account for 13% of GDP, now it's around 18% of GDP. So, but still, very large proportion of people work on the land. Close to 50% still work on agriculture. Now we need to move people away from agriculture into other occupations, industry, services, etc. Now that is the only way they will become more prosperous. The productivity per worker in agriculture is very low. Productivity per worker in industry is much higher. Productivity per worker in the services is even higher. So the more people move from these traditional occupations to more advanced occupations, their incomes will go up, the nation's income will go up, there will be more money in the hands of the government to tax receipts to spend on social collective well-being. So you can't protect for the sake of protection. Yes, there is a transition and associated cost. That cost is borne by society. So one insight from these Nobel laureates here is that you must protect people, workers, not jobs. A particular kind of job might disappear when technology changes.
That's right. Yeah.
So the person who is to be employed in that job, he needs to be looked after. He needs to be trained to take up another job, to a superior kind of job in a new emerging field. So the worker needs to be taken care of, but a job should be allowed to go. If you try to protect the job, you will be hindering technological progress. And that's also an important insight that we get from these Nobel laureates.
Okay. No, I get it. So, but okay, so let me shift focus on what's happening in the United States. But is it what Donald Trump is trying to do? He wants to protect the workers and, not the jobs?
No. So he's trying to turn the clock back on America's progress. He somehow seems to think that manufacturing jobs are the most desirable kind of jobs. Now, this is something that used to be very valuable in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But the US economy, less than 13% of their output is from manufacturing. Or actually 10% is from manufacturing, 13% in India. The only 10% of their output comes from manufacturing. And 9% of workers are in manufacturing. The majority of the workers are in services. And the US has some of the most advanced world-beating technologies in the world. All the advances in artificial intelligence comes from the US. The advanced tech platforms, whether Google or Meta or Microsoft or whatever we use, they are all from the US. The streaming service we are using right now is from the US. All the software we use mostly comes from the US. So financial services, they are well-beating. So these are the services which are given the US the huge advantage they have over the rest of the world. And in the service sector, the US has a trade surplus. They don't have a trade deficit. Now, just focusing on manufacturing, he is trying to appease a certain section of the US population which felt left out by the advance made by other sections of the population. Now, this is a problem with US politics, that society hasn't been able to use the riches created by the advancing well-beating services sector by taking a layer of this wealth created, income created by these advanced sectors to feed into the people who are left behind, who are yet not being able to catch up with the others. So that is the problem of not of the industrial structure or the production structure, but of social policy. So all these are interrelated. To invest in R&D, you need savings, right? And savings are related to the interest rates. Interest rates, in turn, are related to overall macroeconomic stability. If you have high levels of inflation, your interest rate will be naturally be higher. If you have low levels of inflation, your interest rates will be lower. You will be able to flow more savings into R&D. And all these are interrelated. That is what the Nobel laureates showed this year. In the US, one basic insight that society at large gains by state-aided support to R&D is being flouted by Merton. He has declared war on the universities. He's cut back funding to scientific research in many universities because he doesn't like those universities. He is shooing away the talent from the rest of the world that comes to US universities and lab to work to create new capacity for them, new abilities for them. So in all these ways, he is working against the economy's own interest, and is eroding US technological and economic lead for the rest of the world.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Very insightful talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.